Martin, the Communications Director for Cleveland Water Alliance, and we're so glad to have you on this webinar this morning. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. Also, let us know where you're calling in the chat. We have folks calling in from all over the world. Let us know where you're at today. And it is my pleasure to introduce Cleveland Water Alliance's President and Executive Director, Brian Stubbs, to kick us off.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks everyone for joining us today for CWA's 2025 Innovation Summit. We have folks joining from all over the world, and we're certainly proud of our global partnerships and our relationships. Also, what's really nice is, with the team that we put together for you today, quite a few of them I've actually seen more in person this year than I've seen them on virtual. And I got to say that's most welcome, especially those who I just saw a week and a half ago in Aquatech. I see, PureTerra is a good example of that. And thanks for having us at your wonderful reception. Look, our partners throughout Europe and Asia really help us connect to exciting technology that the U.S. needs. We're taking this perspective of a lot of our partners, utilities, industrials, others are really telling us, this is what's keeping them up at night, and just this ecosystem globally of innovators trying to solve this, whether it's, somebody at a research lab at a university or one of our publicly traded global brands. It's really exciting. And, look, I know it's turbulent times, but there's still tremendous demand for the U.S. market. And we're proud of our soft landing here into the U.S. Market. When I look at, right now, two examples from South Korea, one being TechWin and their on-site generation of hypochlorite, a $6 million pilot with Avon Lake Regional Water, and the fact that, they've been here, they're coming here and setting up for manufacturing in the U.S. is a good example of, how that can work for our big hard tech components. And I look at somebody like the Wave Talk, also out of South Korea, that's doing incredible work with validating their technology with a sensor on a chip. So exciting times. One thing I hope everybody kind of leaves with is how expansive our network is, not only around the world and within the Great Lakes region as well. And, we're really grateful. We're lucky to be doing this work. And, one of those partners that's come to our attention and really developed just a fun partnership over this last year is Badger Meter. And Badger Meter is sponsoring our Innovation Summit, which, Brad, we're internally grateful for, but also, place matters. And when Brad initially reached out to our team, just wanting to get more information, and told me point blank, he's like, I just want to get on a plane and come and hang in with you guys. That's no small feat in this day and age. And it just showed me how serious they are, about driving innovation. So, with that in mind, Badger Meter, they've been in this industry for over a century. They continue to evolve with the changing water needs. And, you look at just, water stress increasing at an increasing rate, as the economists say. We need companies like Badger Meter. So with that, I'd like to introduce Brad Lane, Manager of Utility Solutions at Badger Meter. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Brian, and appreciate those kind words. Yeah, Badger, we're really proud and excited to sponsor this Innovation Summit and the Innovator Spotlight Series, which starting today, we're going to showcase a lot of cool technology from around the world. And the Cleveland Water Alliance, how you guys bring together all these industry leaders to focus on managing and protecting water resources. That's been a mission of Badger Meter since our inception, which is actually since 1905, 120 years. So anyone on the call and around the world who's familiar with Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where our headquartered out of, we went to market with the first frost-proof meter, believe it or not, which is really important about 6 months a year in the Midwest here. So as a market leader, we Badger Meter, we provide solutions across municipal, utility, commercial, industrial sectors, helping them all optimize water, reduce waste, and obviously maximize revenue as well. So we launched our suite of Blue Edge smart water solutions at ACE this year in Anaheim in 2024. And that is that's a very comprehensive smart water software suite and solution suite, where everything from water management, including measurement, communication, data analytics, smart water, water quality, and ongoing support. So we really look forward to expanding our partnership with CWA. We love what you're doing. And I definitely invite all the attendees to learn more about our upcoming Innovator Spotlight session. So with that, Brian, back to you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brad. And again, thanks for your support. I see this as just the beginning of a long journey and looking forward to working with you and your team over the coming decade.
Yeah.
So, let's get right into it. Our innovation team has been hard at work these past few years expanding our testbed infrastructure. For those maybe new to us, I encourage you after this session to reach out to the team to learn more about this. I think it's been kind of a game-changing platform and approach to, decreasing the time to market for a lot of water-based technology. And so, given that, we're anxious and glad to share kind of some of these opportunities, some of these really cool innovators from throughout the world that we've been working with. And you're going to hear insights, from experts, industry leaders, and really those innovating the smart water space. So, I'm a wonk for this stuff, and I'm kind of excited to hear some of this because things are moving so fast, and I'm in and out, left and right, and this is my chance to also catch up on what the team's been doing. So, looking forward to hearing about that, hearing about the discussion. For a few of you on the call, as a reminder, we have our Freshwater Innovation Fund, our $25 million seed fund. I know we've got some of our committed LPs on the call today and also some potential LPs. And this is just a really great opportunity to get you to understand how wide this water economy sector is. So with that, let's get rolling. I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by an incredible team. And when it comes to innovation, that starts with our head of innovation and clusters, E.B. Holst, just a true champion of the water innovation sector, a true champion of what we're building in Cleveland, and just, somebody that always makes us aim high and to do more. So, with that, I'm just really pleased to introduce E.B. Holst. E.B., take it away.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks so much. Yes, we have a really good time here on the Cleveland Water Alliance team, and I'm so excited to welcome all of you to this specific discussion around getting faster insights to the market. And that's what this is all about. Before I jump in on a little bit of background of Cleveland Water Alliance in this space, I just want to encourage everybody to say where they're calling in from into our chat. And I'm looking forward to some Q&A engagement with all of you after we have our discussion. So let's get going. So we're going to talk about first, why CWA? Why are we really looking to host this discussion and overview of some of the things that we have going on in this particular space of faster insights? Then we're going to talk about kind of the state of water technology and why the industry needs faster insights with some experts in the fields. And then we're going to jump into some innovator insights. And a lot of what we're going to talk about here, what are some of the challenges of innovating in this space? And teeing that up also for the Spotlight series, where we're going to do some additional deeper dives on specific technologies. So let's get going. Destination Innovation, Cleveland Water Alliance. So, we are an Ohio-based water cluster. This is a term that's used much more in the international market than oftentimes in the US market, but that basically means that we work with all kinds of different players in different sectors, from academia to public utilities to private industry. We're located on the Great Lakes, and we accelerate innovation to an increasingly water-stressed world. We work with about 100 more industry partners, utilities, and research institutions. And we meet with 250 to 300 innovators every year from really across the spectrum. We're talking about faster insights today, and that includes a number of different innovators that we work with, but we really see innovators from across the spectrum, including, even though we're sitting on the shores of the Great Lakes, we see companies that are working in desal. We see companies that are working in filtration and all kinds of different technologies, you know, energy and water nexus. So we see a lot, and you know, it's a key part of what we do is to accelerate those innovations to market. We have a few ways that we do that. One is our Open Innovation Challenge program, and the focus of this is that we really try to put a spotlight on where there's a gap in the market. So there's a need for some type of solution. So there's a challenge that just hasn't yet found an efficient way to address the issue. And so by putting a spotlight on it, we really encourage innovators from around the world to, you know, come up with ideas. And we know when it starts that they may not be anything more than ideas. And so we try to support taking an idea and moving it into a prototyping and then so on when we have an innovation challenge that's industry specific. We also have our accelerator test beds and piloting options. So this really grew out of an understanding that innovators can only get so far in the lab. You develop something and you trial it under some controlled conditions, but we really try to help provide real world conditions that enable not only insights on how a product needs to evolve, but oftentimes user feedback, which can make something then easier to adopt within the market. We provide funding and partner support and services. So it can be, you know, you need to find a new IP attorney. We can help you find and guide you to find the right resources to help with that. We have our own seed fund that is in fundraising right now that Brian mentioned, but we also work with a range of other players that provide funding into innovation technologies and additional services. And then we also provide some market exposure. So that's a little bit about what we're kicking off here with the Spotlight series is there's some technologies we see that we're really excited about, and we want to introduce them to players in the market that may be interested. And then finally, as companies grow and they're ready to really start manufacturing, we can connect organizations with manufacturers and distributors to help you get into the market. So a little bit about where we're located. I know, as Sam mentioned, we've got people calling in from all over the world. So right here in the middle of the right-hand side of the US is the state of Ohio. That's where we're based. And we sit on the Great Lakes. Great Lakes make up about 21% of the Earth's surface freshwater, 90% of the US freshwater supply. And on the southernmost lake here is Lake Erie. That's where Cleveland sits. And for those of you on the metric system, that's the Lake Erie is just a little bit smaller than the country of Belgium. So that's a good piece of trivia for putting things in perspective. Lake Erie supports about 11 million drinking water residents. So we have utilities all around Lake Erie that are drawing water from the lake and providing them to customers. And of course, it's also a huge center for a range of tourist and commercial activities. So Lake Erie specifically is the shallowest and warmest of the Great Lakes. It's the most vulnerable to different dynamics around the lake. So, we've got agriculture, we have industry with maritime activities, and because it's the shallowest, it also is most influenced by things that can go wrong. And as we're also seeing some changes in the overall climate surrounding the region, we're seeing some warming temperatures, we're seeing more harmful algal blooms. And so that backdrop is really what pushed CWA into a more proactive, kind of faster insights frame of mind. So we started to look at how do we enable a faster and more agile response. And one of those things is to be able to put in place devices that can do real-time sensing. And to do that, we also needed to ensure that those devices could send a signal to send that information to the internet. And with that in mind, we've put in place over 7,700 square miles of telecommunications coverage over the Lake Erie Basin. That's a picture of some of our actual tower climbers. And we also deploy hundreds of IoT devices every year so that we're enabling monitoring of all kinds of different parameters and providing that information to a wide range of stakeholders. So we now, with the data that we provide, are now the most digitally connected large freshwater body in the world. And this continues to grow. So we are adding more devices every day. We're adding more data supports into this mix. And we're also leveraging everything that I just described as a test bed. So we're able to host technologies from all over the world to come and trial their technologies in creeks or ponds or out in the middle of the lake or at a beach or on the side of a ship potentially, as well as some of the things that support IoT technologies like data hosting, telemetry technologies are a big interest. All the way through AI and predictive analytics are things that we can enable with this testbed infrastructure. So that's a little bit about CWA and why we're in the mix. But now let's really jump into the topic at hand about faster insights for a water-stressed world. You know, we're seeing water stress everywhere. We're seeing it on the rise. We're seeing more storm activities. We're seeing more drought. And every one of these dynamics really lays the groundwork for how do we get faster insights with these various dynamics and all of the different stakeholders that are impacted by them. So I'm going to kick this off with a little bit of insight on some definitions that we're going to be using here. We've kind of broken up this faster insights discussion into kind of four main areas. One is the Internet of Things, IoT technologies that really translate to enabling automated monitoring. So with much of the industry, certainly historically, being reliant on getting samples of water and taking it back to the lab and testing it. Internet of Things, IoT devices can really mitigate some of that labor. So putting something in place that can automatically monitor conditions can be a very powerful tool. Then we have the components. So what are the things that actually enable those devices to work? It's not a simple thing. It's complicated. There are a number of other tools that go along with that. Like I described, the telemetry that we needed to put in place to enable that. The components are a really important part of enabling faster insights. And then we have rapid detection. So for the purposes of this discussion, we're talking about detection tools that enable detection to be have a human participant in whatever is needed to be monitored. So that can be something that's used out in the field or something that accelerates the detection of something in the lab that is a newer way to get insights without the more traditional labor that may have been involved in traditional analytical work in the lab. And then we have AI and ML, AI and machine learning. And with this, what we're really talking about is use of computer technology in order to recognize patterns or differentiate conditions, where AI mimics human intelligence, machine learning maybe, more self-contained in the design, but really making use of the power of computers to give us faster insights. So I want to introduce our first panel to really give us a lay of the land on these types of technologies. First, I'm going to introduce Keith Hayes. Keith Hayes is Vice President and Managing Director for Bluefield Research, which is the leading market research in the world in the water industry. And his background is going to give him some unique perspective here. He's got telecom, energy, and water sectors as part of his background, and we're very happy to have you, Keith. I'm going to give a little hello.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Evie.
Next is Xavier van Slooten. Xavier is here with us from the Netherlands with PureTerra Ventures. He's an investor, and he has worked for a number of years in early stage climate tech investments. And he's got a really great perspective on what are some of the things that are investable in this space. PureTerra Ventures has a global network and deep expertise in the water industry. It's one of the few funds out there that has been solely water focused. And so we're really excited to have you, Xavier. You want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Really excited to be here as well. Thanks for that introduction, Evie.
Great. And Catie Marchand, applications engineer with YSI Xylem. Anybody who's on this call that doesn't know Xylem has a lot to learn about the water industry. YSI actually specifically is an Ohio company that was acquired by Xylem a number of years ago, focused specifically on different sensors. Catie herself collaborates very directly with research and development teams, product managers, and she also has a background with environmental water quality and environmental watershed management. And so Catie, I've asked to join us to speak really from kind of like the Xylem umbrella point of view about how much activity they actually do in the faster insight space. Catie, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks so much. So I'm going to leave them up here so that if the audience has any questions, you can add some of those questions into the Q&A. Let me just start in with some of my questions with you, Keith. Tell us a little bit about, why do we need faster insights?
Yeah, so obviously the world of water is becoming a more and more complex place to manage assets, meaning we've got climate change issues, we've got aging infrastructure, we have increasing costs to run some of those assets, and we have greater uncertainty around specific weather events. I mean, you just mentioned before some of those harmful algae blooms which have hit the Lake Erie region. So in the sense that we need more sophisticated tools and solutions to navigate those challenges, that's where some of these technologies, the rapid detection type solutions fit in from our point of view. And it's not just obviously the tech itself. As we know, it's technology, it's people, it's processes that make these things really work in the context of whatever operational environment we're talking about here. But as we face greater exposure to some of those risks, as regulation evolves as well, requiring greater compliance, let's say, for discharging at a wastewater treatment plant or for guaranteeing the quality of drinking water, we need new tools that can help support that. And so that means both early warning if there's an event, but it also means more frequent data feeds to get better awareness as to how quality the water source is and how that's being maintained. And so, I think it's really exciting the work that CWA is doing as well, supporting solutions that are helping to address those challenges.
I want to just dive a little bit deeper there, Keith, on something that you mentioned about if something should happen, specific events. Have you seen any specific events that come to mind that have really started to build awareness about the need for faster insight types of technologies? Like, for example, one off the top for me, of course, is here in Ohio, we had the harmful algal bloom in Toledo, which shut down the city water system for about 4 days. And that was almost 500,000 in population that was without water from their utility for about 4 days. Are there additional ones that you've seen that come to mind? And talk a little bit about how you think that impacted people to look more closely at faster insight types of technologies.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm over here in Europe, actually, and we had a catastrophic flooding at the end of October in the Valencia region of Spain. And what happened around that incident was there was a communications failure in terms of the handoff of the situation in terms of the water levels in the rivers, how the rainfall was evolving and moving through the entire basin system, and the exposure on the floodplain. And in a question of hours, what went from a normal grade storm to a once in 300-year event. And so for us, it's really raised the awareness, specifically in Europe. I would say over the last 2 years, there's been 2 or 3 flooding events like this, where early detection and early warning about the situation around floodwater has definitely come to the fore. So, whether you're talking about a biological event or you're talking about a storm event, that has definitely raised awareness because of the loss and obviously human life in the case of the disaster in Spain here, but also in property. Around 80 to 90% of all insurance claims pretty much every year are due to water damage. And so the thinking is that, having better tools, specifically decision support systems around managing stormwater, and a lot of that having to do with rapid detection of the way that both rain gauges are working and level sensors are working together. It has been an example that's come to the fore lately.
That's great. That's really helpful for making it real. I know oftentimes, and we'll talk more about this as we go, but I know oftentimes when you talk about rapid detection or you talk about the use of these technologies, and it's fundamentally about the data, it can feel really abstract to people until they actually kind of experience the use of that. And I'd be interested, Catie, in some of what you see around that, about how people are adopting some of these technologies and why these technologies matter. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one big one that we all have experienced, unfortunately, is COVID. And that obviously is more of a public health issue. But the thing about water resources is water balances between the public health space and public health issues and the environment. So there's interplay there, obviously. But I think because COVID was such a unifying experience and everyone dealt with it, and that there was a lot of focus on, what can we do to affect change in this area. One of the big things that happened was the pathogenic exposure, the pathway detection. So using wastewater to track COVID for epidemiology studies and understanding the tracking COVID and how it's spreading. So we showed the public with that event how powerful water technology is for doing more than just, monitoring and things that people kind of look past, because the water cycle to a lot of the public is a hidden thing, but COVID brought it to the surface because we were able to demonstrate how powerful water technology is in tracking real-time remote insights into something that greatly affects public health. And so I think that helped bring a lot of, it put a spotlight on water technology and has helped unearth to the public the importance of insights that are not only fast, but almost omniscient and able to see things that we're not seeing on the surface, pun intended. But we are able to get responses that are much faster if your insights are fully integrated into a system that isn't just, at a certain point in the cycle or a certain point in the process, but spread out and kind of all encompassing of the water cycle. And that's where the real benefit comes from technology that is able to deliver that real-time data in a holistic sense and also provide direct alerts to people. That way, it's not just collecting data, but it's notifying you. And then that brings people to be able to have important water decisions made, on the spot and be able to respond more quickly to issues that affect, people at large. And yeah, I think water is connected. It's taken for granted, but you can manage water in a box and try to only take account for your inputs and outputs and the process you control. But in reality, it's a tragedy of the commons. We're all responsible for this resource, and we can affect it on all sides. So having technology that kind of bridges those gaps and pools resources, I think is really key. And I'm sure we're going to get into it more.
Can you tell me a little bit about where do you see who inside of what types of organizations are having the light bulb go off? I mean, is it top administrators? Is it people more in the front lines? Where do you tend to see the folks that are driving use and adoption of some of these technologies?
I mean, we know in the water world, all of us on the call, we know that these things are important. You don't have to tell us. I think the light bulb's going off for people who aren't in this world and who don't really think twice about how their water gets to them. These are people that are, they swim in their lakes and now they're starting to think about the water quality of the water they're swimming in, or they're turning on a tap and now they're thinking, where's my water coming from and what's the quality of it and how is it getting to me and things like that. I think those are the people that's really that are getting affected at a new level. But as far as like beyond that, I mean, all of us on both sides of investing in technology and creating water technology. Luckily, that public focus is helping to bring these things into more of a spotlight and allowing us to make more innovations because, it's freeing up resources, maybe not freeing up resources, especially in this day and age. But I think because of this focus, it's bringing more people to the table to have discussions about what needs to happen and putting more pressure on the water situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think some of those questions around who is responsible for example, if Keith was mentioning things going wrong, who's in the hot seat for some of that, and who are the folks that are getting the light bulb about use and adoption of these technologies is a big question for an investor's point of view, Xavier. Can you talk a little bit about some of the value propositions that you're hearing from the market for these technologies and why some of these technologies have become investable and more nuance around that?
Oh, sorry, I was muted still. Absolutely. I think, we see about 500 companies a year, I would say, and about 20% of that is in this particular area where it leads to either faster insights or more actionable insights. So it's a really big part of what we look at on a daily basis. The use cases that you see are also quite broad. So I would say rapid detection of microbiology is definitely one of the more consistent one that we see. We've invested ourselves in a company out of France called Diamidex that is in that area of microbiology detection. I think the PFAS side cannot be sort of left out here. We see a lot of detection technologies on that side, whether it's in situ sensors or it's more on the sampling side, the rapid tests that you can do on site. And then the sort of the measuring technologies that are trying to get multi-parameter measuring into water processes, whether that's drinking water or processed water or wastewater. I think that is also something that we see more and more often as well. And I think for us, a really important question there is something becomes investable when there's clear drivers for customers, right? And I think there's several drivers here. A few have been alluded to already. I think regulation is one of them, but I think the most important one here is if they're actually actionable, these insights, then that would usually also lead to a relief in resources used, free up of resources. And I think when there's a concrete value proposition and concrete business case, then that's when this becomes investable for us. And we do see that now more and more, although, I mean, these are all still very early stage companies that we talk to.
That's really great. I mean, I would be interested in, what is it about the technologies that you see, Xavier, that also make it a company really stand out? So one of those things is that kind of clear sense of the value proposition for the market pull side, but also what are some of the things that you see that are kind of really, really catch your attention as that's really interesting, or things that are kind of like, I don't think that's gonna scale or that's not gonna work in just a general sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's difficult to say. I think, one of the things that definitely catches our attention, us being, we're an investor, but we're a venture capital investor, meaning that we do need to see sort of the potential for something to scale rapidly, right? And one of the things that play into that is, okay, what does the market currently look like? What's the status quo, and is it ready to be disrupted? And I think that is what we really look for there. And if I zoom in a little bit, okay, what is now a market that could be ready for disruption? I think on the microbiology side, like I said, we invested in a company called Diamidex. They're more on the lab side, where they would replace the standard method, which would take anywhere from 5 to 12 days, and they bring that back to 2 days, which is a very good value proposition. But I think the more interesting one, or not more, but an interesting one we're looking now more and more into is, okay, but throughout the network, throughout your infrastructure, how are you going to manage and get insights into biology and biological activity in the water? So I think rapid in situ sensors in water networks, whether that is drinking water or wastewater, I think that is something that really is catching our attention right now, because we feel that there's no real alternative that is actually real time at this point. So it seems like that market is quite open and ready to be disrupted. And we also see the value of having insights there, where you would be able to scale down labor, or other costs, I think, which would make it really interesting for a customer to start working with one of these technologies. Another one, very clear one, would be the, I mean, maybe not very clear, but I think the on-site measuring of PFAS. I know it's you know, it's a little bit of a buzzword. We're all pretty done with hearing that too often, but it's also hard to get around, really. So I think there's also a very clear value proposition where normally you would send it to a lab, it would take several days, it would cost you a lot of money, and that is now potentially being disrupted by tests that are not nearly as expensive per sample, and give you results in, you know, a few minutes or an hour maybe. It's questionable if it's going to get down to the detection limit, and I think that is where, you know, the big sort of, you know, what you're going to have to weigh in there is, okay, what you have is either a very specific test that is very accurate and gives you all the results that you need, or it's more of a, you know, it has a higher temporal resolution, really. So as we say, it's you know, it's real time, or maybe once in an hour, but gives you just a bare minimum maybe for you to take action on. But that is something that, you know, I think in both instances is catching our attention right now.
It's really helpful to get a sense of kind of where you see some of the opportunities. Xavier, I know with some of the work that Cleveland Water Alliance does, we provide data to a range of players, and certainly the utilities that we provide data to have shared with us that having those insights in real time, when possible, can make a really big difference in terms of them planning their, you know, who's on shift. There's, you know, fewer needs to call people off hours to rush in, that there's a change in the source water, or potentially around chemistry that's being used to treat water. I'd be curious from any one of you, where do you think there are some additional big gaps or opportunities, and what do you think are the biggest barriers to adoption? I kind of mentioned that this being sort of abstract when you first start talking about data is sort of the point of these faster insights, making what's going on more quickly available and also actionable, as you pointed out, Xavier. I'd be really interested in hearing what you think are some of the other barriers and where there are some other opportunities. Anyone?
Right off the bat, there's a huge gap between the technologies that we have available and making that data easily digestible and available to the public. And that's going to make the connection between why technology is important and the actionability of the data. But the unique position that Xylem comes from is that we're a water technology company, right? Xylem is a parent company of many brands across the water cycle. So what Xylem does is kind of creates a holistic approach to water management solutions by incorporating all of these different brands, YSI included, which is what I, you know, the environmental water quality technology that I work with. But the point being is that in order to make a holistic solution that can make it to the public, that can make water insights actionable, is that you can't do it alone. No one company is going to fill the gap that, you know, breaks this wide open. It's going to be many different companies working side by side that can provide a full service package. So a barrier is the barriers between each of our parts of the process. You know, there's a lack of data sharing between entities and between companies. So, you know, one company will try a new piece of technology and, you know, maybe it works for them, maybe it doesn't, but they don't share that information with the public, with other companies doing trials. So it's possible that the company that delivered the pilot for a trial of the technology went broke, and now they can't afford to, you know, continue to foster that development. So you kind of lose that momentum if it takes too long to implement something that's groundbreaking. And people aren't willing to take the same levels of risk. So you have, a company that has, delivered a solution, but if it's not something that people can easily sign off on, then it's hard for somebody to want to sign their name to that and say, okay, this is the solution we're going to go with. If it fails, then, that's possibly going to fall back on whoever signed off on it. So I think that breaking down the barriers between data sharing is, absolutely something that we have to do. We cannot be siloed. We have to have holistic solutions and work together and share data. And we can't have fear of failure. So, that's where, companies that can back innovative technologies come in. That can help take away the fear of failure, take away the risk, both financially and legally, and help support innovation, because now you have an entity that's willing to vouch for you and your technology, but also help expedite the process and use connections to break down those barriers between companies and between entities, between groups who really should be sharing their data. So yeah, I think the barriers really need to be de-risked, because that's the only way we're going to move forward, especially in the water world, where the water is connected. We need to be connected too, and we need to shepherd relationships between each other. And that's really a focus of the Xylem Innovation Lab, where we are not only a water technology company, but we fund water technology developers, because it's important to be, hosting on all sides.
Yeah, I think, Catie, everything you said could be said about innovation in general, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's tough, it's risky, and so what are some ways that we can help to de-risk some of that journey? And Keith, I wanted to just check in with you too about where you see some of the barriers in adoption for the end user side, and then also any specific areas where you think there's a gap in market need in faster and more decision support insights.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the inertia is around the regulation, the compliance requirements. So, a lot of public entities that are managing water resources, they don't have tons of money to put into experimenting with new technologies. They really do what needs to be compliant. That's their mission, right? So when you think about what Xavier was saying about finding technologies you can usually scale up, they're ones that become must-have to be compliant, right? And so if we know that some of these contaminants that are showing up in our water are bad, and we know that there's great technology out there that can detect it easily, and we know that there's removal technology for it as well, then what's the gap, right? Why aren't these markets growing at 20, 30% a year until it's saturated, because we know it's bad for our health? Clearly, there is a challenge there. And a lot of it, I think, still has to do with some of the inertia around the way that, particularly water quality testing, from what we've seen, advances over time. Obviously, you have to be very cautious. This is a public health question. Technologies need to be ultra proven. But from what we've seen, we've done several consulting projects now looking at different water quality testing technologies, and particularly real-time testing for micropollutants or PFAS or microbiological contaminants. And it's all there and it all works, but the regulation still does not admit real-time sampling from a lot of these sensors, right? You still have to do the grab sampling, you still have to feed it into the LIMS, and then the laboratory information management system then sends it over. And so it is it's not a streamlined process. It's purposely like that, but there will be over time, I think, particularly right now, what we're seeing is that you've got these new technologies that are moving in parallel with the old way of doing things, right? So you still have somebody doing the grab sampling, putting it into the Hawk analyzer, whoever's analyzers you're buying, and putting that data off to lab, but this could all be going way faster, which we know. And so there are utilities that are experimenting with it. They're using it more for operational decisions than they are for compliance. But over time, that does have to be a compliance thing. And that is going to have to come with, I think, more awareness on the part of the policymakers.
That's great. Thank you, Keith. I just so appreciate the perspectives of all three of you, and I'm going to use some of your framing here to now tee up some discussion with our innovators. So please join in with questions for them as well. Keith, Xavier, Catie, here we go. So, Innovator Insights, I'm introducing 4 new people to the discussion. Ed Rudberg of Nucleic Sensing Systems, or NS2, is a seasoned expert, has run multiple companies from ideation all the way through commercialization and profitability, and has a PhD in natural resources science and management. So he's bringing a lot of expertise here. Nucleic Sensing Systems is a technology that actually enables real-time sampling of using eDNA and eRNA to detect biologics in the water. And we're very happy to have you here. Say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate everyone tuning in.
Great. And next we have Jay Almlie. Jay is Chief Marketing Officer for Satelytics. Satelytics is a geospatial analytics company that is a leader specifically in the energy sector and is doing more work in the water industry. We're very excited actually about the possibilities, what they can do for the water industry. And they specifically focus on one, amongst other things, the use of satellite imagery and the use of algorithms. He's going to be representing the AI portion of our discussion. Ed was on the IoT portion of our discussion. And Jay has some background in pipeline leak detection. Jay, we're so glad to have you. Please say hello.
Thank you, Evie. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good day, everyone. Happy to be here. Looking forward to some good discussion and good questions.
Great, thanks, Jay. Next, we have Paul Martin Schwartz. He's a co-founder and CEO of SenArch. SenArch is an off-grid solar-powered LoRaWAN gateway. I mentioned some LoRaWAN earlier in our discussion here. We were really excited to learn more about his technology. And Paul himself is a seasoned entrepreneur, and he works specifically in design, implementation, and operation of IT and data networking infrastructure. So that's right up the alley of this discussion. And he's representing the components of IoT portion of our innovator group. Say hello, Paul. We're glad to have you. Did we lose him again? Nope, not.
Oh,
Hopefully.
thanks. That was my mute. Happy to be here. Really thrilled and honored to be on the panel. Looking forward to having a good conversation with y'all. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Paul. And last but certainly not least is Alex Certoma. Alex is our Australian joining us from Australia. He's Associated Director Corporate for Universal Biosensors, and this company is specifically producing disposable multi-layered test strips for electrochemical sensing, and currently they are showing some real promise around lead and copper. They're also working on some additional parameters. And Alex has been with Universal Biosensors since August 2020, and he works very closely with the sort of later stages of commercialization, specifically around market identification and initial partnering and distributor relationships. So that'll be a great perspective that you're going to bring to the conversation. Alex, please say hi.
Yeah, thank you, Evie. Great to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Well, I'm really excited to talk to all four of you because one of the things that I really want us to share with our audience today is what it's like to be trying to commercialize technologies in your respective spaces and some of the key things that you've found inspiring that keeps you going and some of the challenges that you also face. So I'm going to start with you, Ed, and ask you if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the key challenges of developing tech in the IoT space specifically. What have you come across in terms of market interest, adoption, or the technology side of things itself?
Sure, thanks so much. And that's a really good question. So my background, I'm inherently interdisciplinary. However, our society isn't always inherently just interdisciplinary. And so I can only speak to our challenges. And what we are doing is bringing what is essentially laboratory technology, droplet digital PCR technology into the field and looking at water quality, whether it be invasive species or source tracking of the biologicals, whatever you may be interested in. So we find ourselves not really always sitting in what is a traditional vertical. Are we a biotools company, or are we a water company, or are we a you name it company? And so some of that leads, and I'm sure any of the or the other founders on this call can say, we really are educating the market on what could be when it comes to biotools or any of these other verticals, especially when you're borderline, if you're called deep tech or something else. So much of it is telling the market, and not only the market what could be, but also investors and convincing everyone that this is a good next step for our field.
Great, thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate that that kind of sharing that perspective of being multidisciplinary when you're trying to bring something to market, but recognizing that the people that you're talking to may not have kind of that texture to go back and forth between all the considerations. I think that's really interesting. I want to ask you, Jay, about from the AI perspective. I remember one of the conversations that we had was around kind of the ground truthing, being able to develop some of your algorithms which are dependent on a lot of data to teach your algorithm. Could you talk a little bit about that and some of the things that are a challenge around that and how you address them?
Sure, thanks, Evie. Actually, some of my answer might echo what Ed just said. A big portion of it is not so much the algorithms, although I will address that too, Evie, because it was a specific part of your question, but really customer education and really sparking imagination. Ed said, bringing the lab into the field. Well, what does that mean? In our case, it is applying AI-based algorithms, which I've already lost some people. I've already lost some of our customers because I've used those words. But also then doing it quickly and doing it over a wide territory from satellite data. Now I've really lost some people. So a lot of it is education, but you are also correct, Evie, in that we are what I like to call multilateral geospatial analytics company. That's a lot of words. I've got to work on that as a marketing officer, but condensing that down, what that means is we're solving a lot of different problems across a lot of different silos within companies who are our customers. That in itself is a big imagination gap. But then taking our propeller head, our really good propeller heads, we can solve problems, we can give actionable results. But how do we actually operationalize that for our customer? That includes some ground truthing up front. And how do we get that customer, that early adopter who's willing to walk that journey with us at the very front? That's also a challenge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I imagine that's certainly a challenge for you too, Paul, with SenArch. I mean, when you're talking about LoRaWAN, for example, again, just saying those words, you probably lose half of your audience. How do you educate some of your market about what it is that SenArch does?
Indeed, indeed, and we try to avoid using those very techy, technology brands or names or abbreviations, because at the end of the day, it's about, as Jay and Ed was saying, lowering the barriers and creating these kind of end-to-end solutions where the networking component is a part of that. It's a part of the ecosystem, and it's a part of the the delivery chain. So if you're deploying sensors, in situ sensors, or you could say sensors on buoys on the lake, you need to have some kind of delivery mechanism for bringing those data, bring those sensor data back to the servers and back to the cloud, and actually creating those insights and actionable relevance from those pieces of data and those time series of data. So what we do is we're trying to solve inherently the problem that we don't have 115 or 220 and 230 volts AC in the wall all over the place. So we're providing a networking mechanism that you can deploy in nature anywhere where there's sun. We can give you a tool set for creating that cloud of networking, that wireless network that you need to connect your sensors. And that is what we're helping the Cleveland Water Alliance doing with the sensors on the buoys, bringing those data sets back to the watershed where we place our gateways, and then the data is then backhauled to the cloud.
Yeah, I found sometimes bringing it to people's own experience can help take that abstract to something more tangible. So I'll often say, we've all had our cell phone somewhere where you can't get a signal. And this is, some of these technologies help to address making sure that you can get a signal, but doing that for an IoT device, for example. Alex, I'm really curious about some of what you've found in evolving your relationship with your end users and being able to kind of get their buy-in and understanding of the value proposition that you bring. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. I guess we've found it quite difficult to actually engage and get that initial feedback. Being a company that's not initially from the water industry and doesn't have a lot of experience. So we've had our technology commercialized in other industries such as human health, in wine, and in the veterinary space. But this product is our first foray into water. So really, a lot of our work has been into identifying the correct end users for what we're doing, and then trying to get some initial feedback in the terms of small pilot studies where we can get users using the device, making sure they're happy with how it functions, but then also happy with how it performs, so that we can improve, continue through the prototyping stage, and basically have a feedback loop as we go through development. Because what may have been suitable for another industry may be completely off for the use in a water utility, or in a wastewater treatment plant, or in industrial waste monitoring area. So actually getting the right connections and building that network to obtain that feedback has probably been our biggest challenge as we move into a new industry, but also into markets that are halfway across the world, in the US from where we are here in Australia.
So it's kind of the getting the use cases, right? So where will the market pull be for a technology like what you're offering, and then getting more nuance around that for how it needs to work for that end user, which kind of goes back to some of the earlier comments as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can monitor heavy metals, so it has such a wide range of different applications and potential. But being a company that has limited resources, it's about identifying those one or two opportunities that we can attack first before we then, I guess, broaden out as we get initial adoption, and then hopefully market penetration and sort of snowball into that exponential growth that I think some of the investors were talking about before.
Yes, investors are always looking for the hockey stick, indeed. I want to ask a little bit about that product side, because we did talk here across all four of you about mostly about kind of the market side, that educating the market and finding the right use cases. Could you talk a little bit about the product side? Like, Ed, if you would, eDNA and eRNA that's not a simple, it's a delicate technology. Could you talk a little bit about how you've worked on the technical side to evolve your product offering?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like anyone else's technologies, we start very much in the laboratory with an idea, right? And you go, well, might this be possible? And able to say, okay, we're having some good results, and we build upon those successes and build upon those successes. And luckily for us, and this gets into, I'm sure, other things we'll talk about, but support from things like some of the Small Business Innovation Research grants in the United States can help transition that technology from universities and get it out there, and then eventually, hopefully, work with folks like the CWA to show that we can have a case study. Any of in the innovators, we love case studies in new markets to show the market opportunity, to show happy customers, and it really is a progression to get there as you go through prototypes and eventually have something that's pretty enough and works well enough to have in front of customers.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, I know we've got kind of a range of different tech stages, as we refer to them, at least in the US, like tech readiness level, earlier stage and later stage. And Satelytics, you guys are you're already commercialized. You've already got a number of different customers. But I also imagine that as you come across some of these customers, they'll get a sense of what you do, and then they'll say, can you do this for something else entirely? Can you talk a little bit about how you address those new market opportunities as they come up?
Sure. Thanks, Evie. You're spot on. I like to call it a lily pad approach. We've taken a lily pad approach to how we offer our products to the market. We started in the water market. We started right here on Lake Erie for very similar reasons that you've talked about, Evie, and others. It has water quality issues at times. In fact, we're here in Toledo, which you mentioned at the outset about us losing water many years ago because of a HAB, a harmful algal bloom. So we started in that field. From there, BP, British Petroleum, caught notice of us and said, oh, could you use that algorithm to solve these problems for us on the north slope of Alaska, where we have some oil properties? Why, we think we can. Are you willing to partner with us? So we did that. We looked at 10,000 different water bodies on the north slope of Alaska, close to where BP had some activity. From there, they said, well, could you also solve this problem and this problem? So our approach, answering your question, EB, has been this lily pad. Solve one problem, let our customers recognize where else it could be applied, and then start solving those problems, proving out one at a time.
I love that. I think that's like the key to any kind of evolution, right? I know it makes a big difference whether you're in the early stage of a company or you're more mature and you have the resources. I know, Paul, you probably have some comments about that too, and Alex as well, about when you're earlier stage, how do you make some of those choices about which thing to go after and which things to say, okay, maybe later.
The whole roadmap and prioritization is a hard task, and it's challenging because you tend to be very focused on getting as much into the product as possible and being able to solve all kinds of problems at once. But because we're a small company, we have to be very diligent about where we spend our calories and where we spend our time. So it becomes a very customer-driven approach where if we see a great demand from one or more customers to implement a certain feature or function, then that becomes prioritized, of course, which is also, I'd like to say, one of the reasons why we think working with the Cleveland Water Alliance is so attractive is because we can get our solution out there into a very, you could say, rough environment where it gets tested in a situation where we can then take that back, those experiences, both successes and failures, and we can put that into our product development and make our product even more customer centric and problem solving.
John, Alex, you were talking too about just you have limited resources. So how do you get that customer feedback early on to be able to gauge traction? Do you have some lessons learned you could share with us?
Yeah, I think probably one of the areas we've had the most success is around attending things like this, industry webinars, events, trade shows, where we can talk to a large people in the market in a short space of time. One of the benefits we have about being, a rapid detection solution is that we can bring it to trade shows, we can bring it to events, we can demonstrate it in person on the spot, giving a result in a couple minutes. So having that amount of people together and being able to show our solution really is the best way that we've found of being able to get people interested, get people aware, and then start to move into some of these other more in-depth evaluation techniques, such as a pilot study or a case study where we'll talk about the benefits of what we've done with the previous customer in a different industry. So, getting in front of people that are in the industry that are motivated to look into innovative technologies such as an event like this is really key for us, particularly trying to break into a new market.
Love it. Well, I want to invite our earlier panelists to bring in some of their own questions, and then here shortly we're going to open it up to some of the questions from the audience. So Keith, Xavier, Catie, welcome back. Do you have some questions for some of our innovators?
Well, I think probably a very general question for you guys. I mean, one of the challenges with water is that it is so hyper local. So when it comes to trying to translate, let's say a use case that you have that works in one river basin or one area versus another, how do you find ways to make the takeaways more universal? Because I know that that's something that a lot of companies that we've looked at struggle with, is that everything kind of feels bespoke and very local versus applicable to a wider group of customers.
Jay, you want to try taking that one?
Well, I can try. I'm wondering if I'm not the best one to answer this, because we don't feel that our solution is localized. I understand the gist of the question, but
Mhm.
if we can see a spectral signature, and that's how we do what we do, if we can see it in one river basin, we can see it anywhere. In fact, we're proving that around the world. So I think perhaps I'm not the best one to answer this question, Evie.
Thanks. That's a really good point. Thank you, Jay. Any of you others add?
I may be able to put my or SenArch's perspective on it, and that is to provide connectivity where it matters. I mean, where it's meaningful and where it's needed. So what we can do is we can provide in addition to supporting a rapid monitoring, rapid sensing, we can provide rapid deployment, which means that, for instance, a little while ago, we were listening to, the gentleman, mentioning the catastrophic event in Valencia. Well, for instance, if we were able to have rapid deployment of these kind of delivery mechanisms, these networks and sensors in nature, we would be able to catch those events and probably even avoid them from happening, because we would have insights and actionable data. So in addition to creating really like large scale network deployments, which we're doing with telecommunications companies such as Netmore Group, we're also providing small bubbles of connectivity where you can set these gateways up, for instance in the watershed, and then create your connectivity where it's really needed.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. We're almost here for some audience questions, but I just want to ask Catie and Xavier if you have any last question before we jump in.
Really quick, if
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead, Xavier.
Thanks. Yeah. So what I'm interested in hearing, right, is we've seen so many different technologies, and I talked about the amount that we see on our own is pretty incredible, but the amount of different use cases, focus areas is also pretty broad, and a large part of the innovators here as well are focusing on the same customer. So how do you make sure in the end that customers are not looking at 10 different things, and how do you make sure that you integrate well, and also is there an opportunity to collaborate and integrate with each other already at these levels, because that also, I can imagine, makes the procurement potentially more interesting or easier, because these utility, if you take utility, they don't have to choose between maybe we'll do microbiology, maybe we'll do heavy metals, well maybe we'll do both at the same time. That's curious to hear.
Love that question, Xavier. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you have a really good point. I always tell people, we don't make the Tylenol that takes your kid's fever down, right? We have the thermometer that tells you that your kid's got a fever. So we need to partner with other innovative companies, other sensors, other AI solutions, so that we can bring to our customer solution suites, so that it's not enough to solve one small problem. We need to solve an overarching problem, and that is at least what we're trying to do with our connections, really to bring together that suite, so we solve the problem, not one small thing.
That's exactly the kind of point that I was hoping to get at as well. And people are famously recalcitrant. Is there any insight you have on how you get people to adopt changes, make changes to their processes? That's really what it comes down to.
I think that's a great question, Catie. We face that challenge with many of our customers. You have to find those early adopters who are known as thought leaders. In the utility industry, it might be a Duke Energy, who's pretty well known for their forward thinking. How do we adopt technology to do what we do better? So when you find them and they're willing to invest in the process with you, and then change their own standard processes, their tried and true processes, to harness that new technology, boy, that makes a loud statement. It makes a louder statement when a Duke can speak for us rather than our marketing department speaking for us. So that's the magic, is if you can find those customers who are thought leaders and want to demonstrate the future, that's a tremendous way forward.
Couldn't agree more.
Hey, at this point, I'm gonna turn some of this discussion over to my colleague Natalie, who is navigating some of the audience questions for us. And stay tuned, all of you, for some of what we're hearing from the audience. Natalie?
Hi, everyone. So actually, the first question is for you, Evie. If you could just talk a little bit more about our innovation challenges and maybe just what goes into planning and establishing that.
Yeah, so I'll keep this brief, and there's always room for more discussion offline. But basically, innovation challenges are where we work with industry partners. It could be utilities, it could be a private company, it could be industrial, where they share with us what specific challenge they're trying to solve. So an example of this would be detecting lead service lines without breaking ground. This is a challenge that we undertook with 6 different drinking water utilities, where there's the need to identify lead service lines without having to dig down to know what they are, which is the current baseline of how you do that. And we'll work with these utilities to basically say, okay, well, how do you do it now? What would a solution look like? What are some of the things that need to be considered in the field, like power, or who's the person who's actually been going to be walking from place to place to do this identification, and fleshing out those specifications. And then we put together this essentially a requests for technologies that we promote all over the world through various partners to bring out innovators who may have a technology already, or they may just have an idea. And we leverage industry experts to help kind of serve on the judges panel. We may engage some of the associations in the industry as well. That's certainly something that we did with the lead service line thing. And then, we really kind of help to support moving those technologies along, whether it's taking it from concept to a prototype or engaging other partners for trialing. Oftentimes we'll have some test facilities for some of those technologies as well. So that's something we do on a kind of a case-by-case basis, but if that's something you're interested in, please contact us.
Thanks, EB. Our next question is, are you finding new industries showing interest or deploying dollars into new technologies or water data analytics? This could be like in the insurance industry.
Yeah, that's funny. Actually, that was the first thing that popped into my mind when I heard this question. I think indeed the insurance side to this is interesting. It brings in new customers, other customers than your typical utilities potentially also, and there's also a different willingness to pay there, and also willingness to innovate. So I think indeed the insurance side is interesting for some of these more for these rapid detection technologies. I think broader in the industry, I think it's all it's I wouldn't necessarily be able to pick one out here. I think I think we do see a lot of technologies that are trying to focus on outside of the utility, and I think as an investor we do like to see that as well generally. I'm leaning towards the food and bev side, but it's so much dependent on trust, and I'm not sure if the needle is really moving already, or that it's still sort of yet to happen.
And regulations as well, I imagine, is part of those drivers, right? So if private industry, for example, has some regulation around certain parameters in the water, then that may drive that private industry to also adopt things a little more quickly.
I think you're on the right track, Evie, and also Xavier, you said it. We tend to think of just the water industry and what does that mean and who are the adopters there, but every other industry has water as a central feature to it as well. Utilities for generation, utilities for transmission of electricity across water bodies where they're monitoring those water bodies. Certainly oil and gas has serious water concerns. So when those other industries invest in new technologies, they're not only helping those industries, but they're also spilling over into adjacent industries such as water clusters and people like that. So I think we need to look at it as a holistic market, especially on this topic of water, because it's so ubiquitous. Everyone has water impacts.
Love that.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
This one is more for the panelists, but are we working on water solutions for traditional field and controlled environment agriculture? Or if anyone could speak to the activities there.
I mean, I can speak to what we've seen on the ag side. Definitely, we see a lot of also rapid detection. I mean, whether it's soil moisture probes, I think there's a ton of companies out there that we've looked at. I don't know if that's right now for us really the most interesting. I think we've ourselves invested in a software company out of Australia that gives irrigation advice based on a range of inputs, and I think that also leans on our thesis that indeed, you can have one data input, but it's more so about how do you make that actionable and how do you integrate that into your entire operation and integrate everything really that when it comes to data. The controlled environment, I haven't seen so much, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot out there, but there's also a lot already implemented. So the amount of disruption possible, I would say there's is a little bit, or we perceive that at least, maybe is a little bit lower right now. So maybe a little bit less of interest from an investment point of view.
And I will also just say that digital solutions aren't going away. They're the road forward for water analysis and water reporting on all sides of the field. So I think that's like the main thing that we're working toward, as a whole solutions point of view. Integrated systems that address issues from all sides of the water industry. Going back to, Xylem does a lot of work in traditional field studies and as well as agriculture and things like that. But the unifying feature is, faster data insights are a big thing today, and getting actionable outcomes. And I think water technology as a whole doesn't really have a choice. We're moving toward that direction.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think the agriculture question specifically touches on something Keith said earlier, which is around specific regions, right? I mean, like drought-stricken areas may have really, really high interest and high investor interest as well in technologies that can not only provide, faster insights on moisture in the soil, but also on the nutrients in the soil. So I do think that kind of goes back to that region specific, some of that region specific demand.
Yeah. I also like to add that, Denmark, where I'm sitting is, we're very it's a very large agricultural component in Denmark, a large industry. What we're seeing is that washing out of nutrients from fields is something that is also creating big problems in our watershed to the sea. The country has over 5,400 miles of you could say border to the ocean, so shoreline, and our inner waters are very hard stricken by lack of oxygen, which is caused by these nutrients being washed out. So that's one thing. The other thing is that with the rising sea levels and the more intense weather systems, we're also very conscious of flash floods. So water is something that is taken very seriously here in this country, at least, where we have sensors both in fields monitoring you could say the nutrients and the agricultural components, but also the rising sea levels and flash floods to warn against catastrophes. So absolutely. Also, seeing it from a holistic point of view here.
Okay, we've got one more question. I know there's a lot of questions we didn't get to, but one last question and then we're wrapping up. I know we're a little bit over time.
I think this is actually a great one to wrap up on. As we all know, the water utility industry is famously conservative and slow to adopt new tech because of the regulatory landscape. So how could utility groups help adopt new technologies and kind of just make that a better transition?
Let's make innovation not a dirty word. Right? It's going to be the chicken and the egg when it comes to regulation and innovation. Innovation is always going to precede future regulations. And so, finding those early innovators, getting those case studies as you have that time lag, finding other verticals that you can continue to show your value add, I think is critically important.
Yeah, the benefit of providing the technology has to provide a benefit that outweighs the cost of adoption. It's got to be innovative to the point where it improves efficiency, it makes people's lives easier, it improves their their cost of monitoring in the long term.
Yeah, and I think an additional benefit that is potentially maybe going under the radar here is also you're dealing with an aging workforce in utilities, and they might not be as open to new innovation. But what you also see is if you would adopt more innovation, that also makes the whole notion of working for a utility more interesting for a younger workforce as well. So I also see that could be a potential sort of side benefit that is now, I don't know if utilities realize that enough, that could also be of a lot of interest.
I love that. Thank you. That's a great additional point, Xavier. So with that, I just want to thank all of you, our panelists, and remind everyone that there's more to come. The Spotlight series is yet ahead, where we're going to do some deeper dives on technologies and specifically also on our faster insights technologies, and a special session featuring Badger Meter and some things that you probably don't know that Badger Meter does. So this is an exciting time in the water industry. Please register for our next session, Components of IoT in Water Technology, and we'll see you in April. Thanks so much for attending.